Nobody paid attention to Nurse Emily Parker. And that was exactly how she wanted it. At 34 years old, Emily had mastered the art of being invisible, not literally, just socially. The kind of person people noticed without remembering. Brown hair, blue scrubs, comfortable shoes, friendly smile. Nothing remarkable. Nothing memorable. She worked in the trauma wing of Harbor Regional Medical Center, a massive hospital located just outside San Diego. The hospital treated everyone: tourists, businessmen, construction workers, police officers, military personnel, especially military personnel. The nearby naval base supplied a steady stream of patients. Most were routine cases, broken bones, training injuries, heat exhaustion, nothing dramatic, until Tuesday. The day everything changed. The emergency department was unusually busy, every trauma room occupied, doctors rushing, monitors beeping, stretchers moving constantly. Emily moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, checking medications, updating charts, comforting nervous patients, doing what she always did. Then the doors burst open. 3 Navy SEALs entered the hospital carrying a wounded teammate. The room instantly shifted, not because of who they were, because of how they looked, covered in dirt, covered in blood, exhausted. The injured man had suffered severe trauma during a training exercise off the coast. Nothing classified. Nothing secret. Just a terrible accident. At least that's what everyone believed. The trauma team immediately took over. Doctors surrounded the patient. Nurses moved into position. Emily joined them. One of the SEALs stood nearby, watching. Tall, broad shoulders, weathered face, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Mercer, a man who trusted almost nobody, especially civilians, especially hospital staff. The SEAL watched Emily closely, then quietly spoke to another teammate. "She looks about 12. The second operator laughed. Emily heard it, pretended she didn't. The third SEAL smirked. "Hope she knows what she's doing." The operators weren't trying to be rude. Not intentionally. They were worried. Their teammate's life hung in the balance. Fear often sounded like arrogance. Emily knew that, so she ignored them. Hours passed. The surgery succeeded. The wounded operator stabilized. Everyone relaxed, including the SEALs. Eventually, they moved into the waiting area. Coffee cups, exhausted conversations, long hours. The usual hospital routine. Emily crossed paths with them several times, each time receiving the same polite indifference. Just a nurse, nothing more, nothing less. Then, around midnight, the first warning sign appeared. A man entered the hospital lobby. Average height, average build, baseball cap, gray hoodie, completely forgettable, which immediately made him suspicious. Emily noticed him because he wasn't acting like a visitor. He wasn't checking signs, wasn't asking directions, wasn't visiting patients. Instead, he was studying exits, security cameras, police officers, people. The nurse felt something tighten in her chest. Instinct, the kind she'd learned never to ignore. The man disappeared down a hallway. Emily watched him go, then continued working. But something felt wrong, very wrong. 10 minutes later, a scream echoed through the hospital. Everyone froze. Then came the gunshot. Boom! The sound thundered through the building. Patients screamed. Doctors looked up. Nurses froze. Then another shot followed, and another. Panic erupted instantly. The hospital transformed into chaos. People ran. Families cried. Security officers rushed toward the danger. The SEALs were already moving. Years of training took over. Ryan Mercer and his teammates sprinted toward the sound, without hesitation, without discussion. Then they reached the lobby, and what they saw stopped them cold. The man in the gray hoodie stood holding a rifle. A terrified receptionist lay on the floor. Several visitors were trapped nearby. The attackers screamed incoherently. Terrified. Unstable. Dangerous. The SEALs immediately began positioning themselves. Looking for an opportunity. Looking for a way to stop him. Then someone stepped between the attacker and the hostages. A nurse. Blue scrubs. Brown hair. comfortable shoes. Emily Parker. The SEALs stared, confused, then horrified, because the nurse had just walked directly toward an armed attacker. And nobody understood why. The entire lobby froze. Patients, visitors, doctors, security guards, everyone. The attacker swung his rifle toward Emily, immediately. "Stop!" The scream echoed through the room. The nurse stopped walking, exactly 3 yards away. The rifle pointed directly at her chest. The SEALs watched from behind cover. Ryan Mercer felt his stomach tighten. Because this was about to end badly, very badly. The attacker was sweating heavily. His hands shook. His breathing was erratic, unstable, desperate, the most dangerous kind of threat. The receptionist sobbed on the floor. The man screamed again. "Back away!" Emily didn't move, didn't panic, didn't plead. She simply looked at him, calmly. The attacker noticed. And oddly, that seemed to bother him, a lot, because everybody else looked terrified. Emily didn't. Then the nurse spoke, softly. "What's your name?" The question caught everyone off guard, especially the attacker. "What?" "Your name." Silence. The man blinked, confused, then answered automatically. "Daniel." Emily nodded. "Okay, Daniel." The attacker frowned. Something about the conversation felt wrong, like he wasn't in control anymore. Then Emily took another step. The rifle immediately rose. "I said stop." The nurse stopped again, exactly where she wanted. The SEALs watched carefully. Ryan noticed something strange. Emily wasn't acting randomly. She was positioning herself, calculating angles, distances, timing. The operator frowned. Interesting. Then the attacker shouted again. "Get back!" Emily ignored the command. Instead, she asked another question. "Did somebody hurt you?" The man's face twisted. Pain, anger, fear, all mixed together. The rifle wavered slightly, only slightly, Emily noticed. So did Ryan. The SEAL's eyes narrowed. Because the nurse wasn't calming the man, she was distracting him. Then the attacker screamed. "My brother died here." The lobby fell silent. Everyone listened. The man pointed toward the hospital. 12 hours. His voice cracked. 12 hours nobody helped him. Tears streamed down his face. The rifle shook violently. The receptionist cried harder. The situation was spiraling fast. Then Emily said something unexpected. "I'm sorry." Silence. The attacker froze. The sincerity in her voice felt real, because it was. For a brief moment, the man's anger weakened, and that's when Emily moved. Not dramatically, not obviously, just one tiny adjustment, a slight shift of her feet. Ryan Mercer noticed immediately. Then his eyes widened. No. Impossible. The SEAL leaned forward, suddenly focused, because he recognized the stance. Not nursing, not self-defense, something else, something professional, something dangerous. The attacker never noticed. He remained focused on his grief, on his rage, on the nurse standing before him. Then security officers appeared at the far end of the hallway. Bad timing, very bad timing. The attacker saw them, instantly. His expression changed. Panic, pure panic. The rifle came up, toward the hostages, toward the receptionist, toward innocent people, and Ryan Mercer knew exactly what was about to happen. The attacker was about to shoot. The SEAL started moving. Too far away. Not enough time. Nobody had enough time, except Emily. 7 seconds. That was all it took. Later, the security footage would become famous. Military instructors would study it. Law enforcement trainers would analyze it. And the 3 SEALs would watch it dozens of times, trying to understand what they'd seen. But in the moment, everything happened too fast. The attacker tightened his finger on the trigger. Emily moved. 1 step, 1 rotation, 1 explosive burst of speed. The rifle swung toward her. Too slow, much too slow. The nurse crashed into the weapon, hard. The muzzle shifted upward. Boom! The round shattered a ceiling light. Before anyone could react, Emily controlled the barrel, twisted. The attacker's wrist snapped sideways. A scream erupted. 3 seconds. The rifle fell. 4 seconds. Emily struck the attacker's elbow. 5 seconds. The man hit the floor. 6 seconds. The weapon slid across the lobby. 7 seconds. The attacker lay unconscious. The lobby became silent. Completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The receptionist stared. The doctors stared. The patients stared. Even the SEALs stared, because they had just witnessed something impossible. A nurse, a regular hospital nurse, had neutralized an armed attacker in 7 seconds, without hesitation, without panic, without missing a step. Ryan Mercer slowly looked at his teammates. Neither man spoke, because all three were thinking the exact same thing. That wasn't nursing training, not even close. And suddenly, they desperately wanted to know who Emily Parker really was. The lobby remained silent. Not normal silence. Shock. Pure shock. The kind that follows something people can't immediately understand. The attacker lay unconscious. The rifle sat several feet away. The receptionist stared at Emily, mouth open, unable to process what she'd just witnessed. A security officer finally moved. Then another. They quickly secured the attacker. Handcuffs clicked into place. The danger was over, at least for the moment, but nobody's attention remained on the gunman. Every eye in the lobby focused on Emily Parker. The nurse calmly adjusted her scrubs, straightened her ID badge, then asked a security officer, "Is anyone hurt?" The officer blinked. "What? Anyone injured?" Silence. The security guard stared, then shook his head. "No," Emily nodded. "Good." Then she turned and started walking away, like she'd merely finished delivering medication. The entire lobby watched her leave. Nobody stopped her. Nobody knew what to say, especially the SEALs. Ryan Mercer stared after her, then finally broke the silence. "What the hell was that?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew. A police officer approached. "You know her?" Ryan shook his head. "She's one of the nurses." The officer laughed. "No." Silence. "She's definitely not just a nurse." Ryan couldn't argue, because he agreed, completely. Meanwhile, Emily entered a supply room, closed the door, and finally exhaled. Slowly, deeply, because her hands were shaking. Now, not during the attack, not during the danger. Now, the adrenaline finally arrived. The nurse leaned against a shelf, closed her eyes, and silently cursed herself. She'd exposed too much, far too much. 2 years, 2 peaceful years, gone in 7 seconds. Then someone knocked 3 times. Emily immediately recognized the rhythm. Military. The nurse sighed. Of course, the door opened. Ryan Mercer entered. Alone. The SEAL looked uncomfortable, which was unusual, very unusual. The operator studied her, then spoke. "You want to explain that?" Emily smiled faintly. "No." Ryan laughed. The answer somehow made perfect sense. The SEAL crossed his arms. "Fair." Silence. Then he looked directly at her. "Military." The nurse looked away. Ryan immediately noticed. Interesting. Very interesting. Then he asked again. "What branch?" Emily finally answered. "Retired." The SEAL laughed. "That's not a branch." "No, it isn't." Silence. Then Ryan nodded. "Special operations." Not a question, a statement. The nurse didn't confirm it, didn't deny it, which confirmed everything. The SEAL whistled softly, then shook his head. "You know," another pause. "We spent 5 minutes figuring out how to stop that guy." Emily smiled. Ryan continued. "You spent 7 seconds." The nurse shrugged. He was emotional. The SEAL stared, then laughed again, because somehow that sounded even more impressive. Then something unexpected happened. Ryan's radio crackled. Immediately, the SEAL answered. "This is Mercer." The response came fast, urgent, professional. Ryan's expression changed instantly. The smile vanished. "What?" Silence. Then, "When?" Another pause. The SEAL looked toward Emily, then frowned. "Understood." The transmission ended. The room became quiet. Emily immediately recognized the look on his face. Bad news. Very bad news. "What happened?" Ryan hesitated, then answered. "The attacker wasn't acting alone." The nurse froze. The SEAL continued. "Police searched his vehicle. Silence. They found photographs. Emily's stomach tightened because she already knew. Somehow, she already knew. Ryan pulled out his phone, opened a picture, then handed it over. Emily looked and immediately felt her blood run cold. The photographs showed the hospital, the staff, the entrances, the security cameras, weeks of surveillance, months, maybe. Then she saw the final photograph, a close-up image, one specific employee, one specific nurse, herself. Ryan watched her reaction carefully, then quietly asked, "Why would an armed attacker be carrying surveillance photos of you?" The nurse didn't answer, because she wasn't looking at the photo anymore. She was looking at something else, a symbol, tiny, hidden in the corner of the image. Most people would have missed it. Emily didn't, because she recognized it immediately. And suddenly, the attack in the lobby didn't look random anymore, not even close. Someone had sent that man, someone who knew exactly who she was, and whoever it was, had finally found her. Ryan Mercer watched Emily carefully. The nurse hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't spoken. She simply stared at the symbol, a tiny black marking hidden in the corner of the surveillance photo. To anyone else, it meant nothing. To Emily, it meant everything. Oh, because she'd seen it before. Years ago, in places nobody talked about, on operations nobody acknowledged. The symbol belonged to a private network, a shadow organization, the kind that existed between governments, between intelligence agencies, between laws. Officially, they didn't exist. Unofficially, they were dangerous, very dangerous. Ryan noticed the change immediately. "You recognize it?" Not a question, a statement. Emily slowly handed the phone back, then looked away. The seal frowned. "Emily!" Silence. "Who are they?" The nurse finally answered. "I was hoping I'd never find out." The response sent a chill through the room, because it wasn't fear, it was experience. Then another voice interrupted. "Excuse me." A police detective entered. Middle-aged, sharp eyes, serious expression. The detective looked directly at Emily. "Ma'am." She already hated where this was going. The detective continued. "We need a statement." Ryan laughed. The detective looked confused. "What?" The SEAL shook his head. "Good luck." The officer frowned, then looked back toward Emily. The nurse sighed, long, tired, then nodded. "Fine." An hour later, the hospital had mostly returned to normal. The attacker remained in custody. The wounded SEAL continued recovering. The media had arrived. Reporters crowded outside. News channels replayed the security footage repeatedly. 7 seconds, again, and again, and again. The footage was spreading rapidly online. Millions of views. Millions of questions. Who was the nurse? Nobody had answers. Meanwhile, inside an interrogation room at the police station, the attacker finally woke up. His wrists were cuffed, his face bruised, his ego shattered. A detective sat across from him. "Who sent you?" Silence. The attacker stared at the table. The detective tried again. "Why the hospital?" Nothing. Then the detective placed a photograph on the table. Emily's photograph. The attacker's eyes immediately reacted, only for a moment, but it was enough. The detective leaned forward. "You weren't after the hospital." Silence. "You were after her." The attacker smiled, a broken smile, then finally spoke, his first words since his arrest. "Too late." The detective frowned. "What does that mean?" The man laughed softly, then looked up, directly into the detective's eyes, and whispered, "They already know where she is." Back at Harbor Regional, Emily sat alone in the staff lounge. The room was empty, quiet, peaceful, for now. The nurse stared out the window, watching the sunrise, trying to think, trying to plan, trying to figure out what came next. Then the door opened. Ryan entered, carrying 2 coffees. He placed one beside her. Emily accepted it. "Thanks." The SEAL sat down. Silence followed. Then Ryan asked the question everyone wanted answered. "What were you?" The nurse smiled, not because the question was funny, because she'd known it was coming, eventually. Then she answered, carefully, "I worked with people who did bad things." Ryan waited. The nurse continued. "My job was stopping them. The SEAL nodded slowly. That explained a lot, maybe too much. Then his phone vibrated. Ryan checked the screen, immediately frowned. What? Emily noticed. The SEAL showed her a photograph taken less than 20 minutes ago. The image showed the hospital parking lot, taken from long distance, professional surveillance, high-quality optics, and standing near the emergency entrance was Emily. The photo had been sent anonymously, no message, no explanation, just the picture. The nurse stared at it, then looked toward the window, toward the parking lot, toward the world outside. Somebody was watching, right now, not yesterday, not last week, right now. Then Ryan quietly asked, "How many people know who you are?" Emily's answer came instantly. "Not enough." The SEAL frowned. "What does that mean?" The nurse stood, looked toward the hospital entrance, then quietly answered, "It means whoever found me." Silence. "Isn't finished," and for the first time since the attack, Emily Parker felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not panic, anticipation, because she knew something was coming. And when it arrived, the attack in the hospital lobby would look like a warning shot, nothing more. Emily Parker stood near the emergency entrance, watching, waiting. The anonymous photograph remained open on Ryan Mercer's phone. A photograph taken less than 20 minutes earlier. Someone was watching the hospital, someone professional, someone patient, and that made Emily nervous, because amateurs made mistakes, professionals didn't. Ryan noticed the expression immediately. "You know who it is?" The nurse shook her head. "No." Silence. Then, "But I know the type." The SEAL crossed his arms. "Which is?" Emily stared toward the parking lot. "Hunters." The answer hung in the air, uncomfortable. Then her phone vibrated. One notification, unknown number, no caller ID, no message history. The nurse froze, slowly opened it. A text, just 6 words. "You should have stayed hidden." Ryan read it too. The SEAL immediately stood. That's not good." "No, it isn't." The message disappeared seconds later, automatically deleted. "Professional. Very professional." Ryan grabbed his phone. "FBI." Emily shook her head. "Too late." The SEAL frowned. "What?" The nurse looked outside again, then quietly answered, "They're already here." Silence. Then she pointed toward the parking structure, a black SUV, parked 3 levels up, dark windows, no license plate visible, nothing unusual. Unless you knew what to look for. Ryan squinted. "I don't see anything." Emily smiled faintly. "Exactly." The SEAL stared, then finally understood. The vehicle wasn't hiding, it was blending in. The best surveillance was invisible. Then something happened. The SUV started moving, slowly, deliberately, driving away. Ryan frowned. "Why leave now?" Emily answered immediately. "Because they know I saw them." The SEAL stared. The nurse wasn't guessing, she was certain, which somehow felt worse. Then a nurse rushed into the hallway, out of breath, panicked. "Emily!" The nurse turned. "What happened?" The young woman swallowed, then answered, "Your patient." Silence. "The wounded SEAL." Ryan immediately moved. "What about him?" The young nurse looked terrified. "He's gone." The world froze. Ryan blinked. "What?" The nurse continued. "His room is empty." Silence. Then, the security camera feed went dark. The SEAL was already running. Emily right behind him. The hallway blurred. Doctors moved aside. Patients stared. Something was very wrong. Very wrong. They reached the room, empty. The bed sat abandoned. The heart monitor disconnected. The IV removed. No blood. No struggle. Nothing. Ryan stared. Confused, then furious. The recovering operator couldn't even walk properly. He certainly couldn't disappear. Not alone. And Emily moved through the room carefully, examining, observing. Then she stopped, near the window. A small piece of paper rested on the floor. Folded, deliberately placed. The nurse picked it up, opened it. One sentence. "We took the wrong target before. Not this time." Ryan read it. His face darkened. The message wasn't for the SEAL. It was for Emily. The wounded operator had been taken because of her. The realization hit hard. Then Ryan asked, "Who are these people?" The nurse remained silent, because she finally understood. This wasn't revenge. Wasn't personal. Wasn't random. Someone wasn't trying to kill her. Someone wanted something from her, and that was far more dangerous. Then another realization struck. The symbol, the surveillance, the attack, the kidnapping, they all pointed toward one person, one man. A ghost from a life Emily thought she'd escaped forever. The nurse slowly sat down. For the first time all day, she looked shaken. Ryan immediately noticed. Who? Emily stared at the note, then quietly answered. A man named Victor Kane. The SEAL frowned. The name meant nothing to him. It meant everything to her, because Victor Kane wasn't just dangerous. He was legendary, former intelligence, former special operations, former everything. The kind of man governments denied existed. The kind of man who never failed. Ryan studied her expression, then asked, "Can he be stopped?" The nurse looked up, and for the first time, Ryan saw genuine concern in her eyes. Oh, not for herself, for everyone else. Then Emily answered, very quietly. Nobody's ever managed it. The room became silent, because suddenly, the attack at the hospital wasn't the real story. It was merely the opening move, and Victor Kane had just kidnapped a Navy SEAL to send a message. The game had officially begun. Victor Kane. The name hung in the air, heavy, dangerous. Ryan Mercer stared at Emily, waiting. The SEAL had spent nearly 15 years around special operators. He knew one thing: when elite people feared someone, there was usually a very good reason. Tell me. Emily looked exhausted, not physically, mentally, like she was reopening a door she'd spent years trying to lock. Finally she sighed, then spoke. Victor Kane trained operators. Ryan frowned. Lots of people train operators. The nurse shook her head. Not like him. Silence. Then, he trained the people who trained them. The room became very quiet. Ryan immediately understood. The man wasn't just dangerous. He was foundational, a ghost hidden beneath generations of special operations. Then Emily continued. Officially, he retired. A pause. Unofficially, he disappeared. Ryan nodded slowly. And now he's back. The nurse looked at the kidnapping note. No. Silence. He never left. Meanwhile, 30 miles away, the wounded SEAL slowly regained consciousness. Pain exploded through his body. The operator groaned, then opened his eyes. Dark warehouse, metal walls, industrial lighting, handcuffs. Not ideal. The SEAL immediately began assessing. Exits, entrances, threats, options. Very few options. Then, a voice echoed through the room. Calm, professional. Good. The wounded operator looked up. An older man sat across from him. Gray hair, black jacket, ordinary appearance, completely forgettable, except for the eyes, cold, calculating. The kind of eyes that never stopped evaluating people. Victor Kane, the kidnapped SEAL, immediately knew, not because he'd met him before, because Emily had described him perfectly. The older man smiled. You recover quickly. The operator remained silent. Victor laughed softly. Good. Silence. Then, I dislike talkative prisoners. Back at Harbor Regional, federal agents had arrived. The FBI, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, military intelligence. Everyone wanted answers. Nobody had any. A conference room became a temporary command center. Maps covered the walls. Photographs filled tables. Investigators rushed everywhere. Ryan sat beside Emily. The nurse looked completely out of place. Blue scrubs, coffee cup, hair still tied back. Yet somehow, everyone kept looking at her. Because every time a new clue appeared, Emily noticed something nobody else did. A vehicle route, a surveillance pattern, a communication method, tiny details, critical details. Finally, one FBI agent leaned forward. You've done this before. Not a question. The nurse smiled faintly. Something like that. The agent shook his head, then pointed toward a map. We have nothing. Emily stood, walked toward the map, studied it, then pointed immediately. The room froze. What? The FBI agent frowned. The nurse tapped a location. Old industrial docks, near the harbor. The room stared. "Why there?" Emily answered instantly. "Because it's obvious." Silence. Several agents looked confused. The nurse continued. "Which means nobody checked." The room became quiet. Then Ryan laughed, because that sounded exactly like something a professional hunter would do. Hide where nobody bothers looking. Then Emily pointed toward another location, an abandoned shipping yard. Then another, an old warehouse district. Patterns emerged. Connections appeared suddenly. The room had leads. Real leads. The FBI agent looked impressed. Very impressed. Then a technician rushed inside. "Sir!" Everyone turned. The technician looked excited. "Oh, we found something." A laptop was connected to the main screen. Satellite imagery appeared, then zoomed. Closer, closer, closer. An abandoned warehouse, near the harbor. One vehicle visible, black SUV, the same SUV from the hospital. The room erupted. Agents stood. Phones appeared. Teams mobilized instantly. Finally, a target. Then everyone looked toward Emily. The nurse already knew, because she'd recognized the location immediately. Ryan noticed. "You know that place?" Emily nodded, very slowly. The SEAL frowned. "How?" The answer made the room silent, because the nurse said only 4 words. "I was trained there." Nobody spoke, not for several seconds. Then Ryan quietly asked, "By Victor Kane?" Emily looked at the warehouse image, then nodded. The room collectively understood something. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was personal, very personal. And somewhere inside that warehouse, Victor Kane was waiting, not hiding, not running, waiting, because he wanted Emily to come. The question was why, and nobody liked the possible answers. The convoy rolled out 20 minutes later. Black SUVs, unmarked trucks, federal vehicles, a small army moving quietly through San Diego's industrial district. Nobody spoke much. The tension inside the lead vehicle was heavy. Ryan Mercer sat across from Emily. The nurse stared out the window. Silent, focused. The closer they got, the quieter she became. Ryan noticed. "You okay?" Emily smiled faintly. "No." The honesty surprised him. The SEAL nodded. Fair enough. Because they were driving toward the man who had trained her, the man who apparently knew her better than anyone, the man who had kidnapped one of Ryan's teammates. Nobody would be okay. Then the radio crackled. "Target location in sight." The convoy slowed. Satellite images matched perfectly. Abandoned warehouse, rusting fences, broken windows, decades-old shipping containers. Everything looked deserted, which immediately made it suspicious. The FBI commander studied the building through binoculars. "No visible movement," Emily answered immediately. "Of course not." The commander looked over. The nurse pointed toward the roof. A small reflection, barely visible. Optics. Someone was watching. The commander swore under his breath. Then the operation began. Teams spread out. Perimeter established. Snipers deployed. Entry routes assigned. Everything moved with professional precision. Then Emily said something nobody expected. "He's letting us do this." Silence. Ryan frowned. "What?" The nurse never looked away from the warehouse. "Victor always controls the battlefield." Another pause. "If we're here," silence. "It's because he wants us here." Nobody liked that answer, not one bit. Then a radio transmission suddenly interrupted. An unknown signal, broadcasting directly toward their frequency. The entire command channel went silent. Then a familiar voice appeared. Victor Kane. Calm, relaxed, almost amused. "Hello, Emily." The nurse closed her eyes, just for a second. The voice continued. "You took longer than expected." Nobody spoke. Victor laughed softly, then continued. "I suppose retirement made you slower." Ryan glanced toward Emily. The nurse remained expressionless. Victor kept talking. As for the SEAL, a pause. "He's alive." Relief swept through the team, briefly. Then Victor added, "For now." The relief vanished immediately. The older man's voice echoed across every radio. "I'll make this simple." Silence. "Come inside alone." The FBI commander immediately shook his head. "No chance." Victor laughed. A genuine laugh. Then answered, You won't stop her." The room became silent, because everybody knew he was right. Then, Victor spoke directly to Emily. 1 hour. A pause. After that, he dies. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Heavy silence. The FBI commander immediately spoke. "We're not doing that." Emily stared at the warehouse. The nurse already knew. Then Ryan stepped closer. "Don't." Silence. "Whatever you're thinking." Emily looked at him, then smiled sadly. The SEAL immediately understood. She'd already made her decision. "Damn it." The nurse looked back toward the building, then quietly answered. "He won't negotiate," the commander interrupted. "We'll breach." Emily shook her head. "No." The room froze. "What?" The nurse pointed toward the warehouse, then calmly explained. "Victor trained hostage rescue teams." Silence. "He designed hostage rescue scenarios." Another pause. "He knows every breach tactic you'll try." Nobody spoke, because the terrifying part was, it sounded true. Then Emily reached into her pocket, pulled out a small metal coin. What? Old, scratched, worn. Ryan frowned. "What is that?" The nurse stared at it, then answered. "The day I graduated." Silence. "Victor gave this to me." The room watched quietly. Then Emily slipped the coin back into her pocket and started walking toward the warehouse. Alone. Ryan grabbed her arm immediately. The nurse stopped. The SEAL looked directly into her eyes, then said, "You're not doing this by yourself." Emily smiled, a real smile this time, then answered, "That's exactly what he expects." Ryan frowned. The nurse continued, "And for the first time in his life." She looked toward the warehouse, toward Victor Kane, toward the man who believed he controlled everything. Then Emily smiled again. "He's wrong." Inside the warehouse, Victor Kane watched through security cameras. The older man smiled. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned, or so he thought. Then a door behind him opened. The kidnapped SEAL sat tied to a chair nearby. Bruised, exhausted, but alive. Victor glanced toward him, then smiled. "You'll witness something special today." The SEAL remained silent. Victor nodded approvingly, then looked back toward the cameras. Toward Emily. Toward the woman he had trained years ago. The woman he considered his greatest student. And greatest disappointment. The older man's smile widened because he believed this story would end exactly the way he wanted. He had no idea that Emily Parker had spent the last 7 years preparing for this exact moment. Emily Parker walked toward the warehouse alone. At least that's what it looked like. The FBI watched from a distance. The SEAL teams watched from a distance. Victor Kane watched from his cameras. Everyone believed the same thing. Emily was walking into a trap. The only person who knew otherwise was Emily. The warehouse door creaked open. Darkness waited inside. The nurse stepped through. The door closed behind her. Silence. The massive building stretched before her. Old shipping containers, rusted machinery, shadows everywhere. Perfect terrain for an ambush. Perfect terrain for Victor Kane. A spotlight suddenly switched on. Then another. Then another. The warehouse illuminated piece by piece, until finally, Victor Kane stepped forward. Calm, relaxed, confident. The kidnapped SEAL sat nearby, handcuffed to a metal chair, alive, for now. Victor smiled. "Hello, Emily." The nurse stopped, 10 yards away. Neither moved, neither spoke, for several seconds. Then Victor sighed. "You look well." Emily smiled faintly. "You look old." The older man laughed, a genuine laugh. The SEALs stared between them, trying to understand, because they didn't look like enemies. They looked like family members who hadn't spoken in years. Victor nodded. "Still funny." Emily didn't answer. The older man walked slowly around the room, studying her. Then, finally asked, "Do you know why I brought you here?" The nurse answered immediately. "No." Victor smiled. "Good." Silence. Then he pointed toward the SEAL. "Because he isn't the target." Ryan's teammate looked confused. Emily didn't. The nurse already suspected. Victor continued. "You are." Silence. Then, "You always were." The older man sighed, almost sadly. "You were my best student." The warehouse became quiet. Victor looked disappointed, genuinely disappointed. Then he continued. "And then you walked away." Emily finally spoke. "You taught me to protect people." Victor nodded. "I did." Silence. "Then I realized you were protecting the wrong people." The nurse stared. Victor's eyes hardened. "For the first time all night. You save strangers." A pause. "You save fools." Another pause. "You save people who'll never appreciate it." The older man spread his hands. "And for what?" Emily didn't hesitate. "For them." The answer came instantly. No doubt, no hesitation. Victor laughed, then shook his head. "That's why you'll never understand." The nurse smiled. "No." Silence. "That's why you never did." The words hit harder than any punch. For the first time, Victor looked hurt, actually hurt. Then anger replaced it immediately. The older man pulled a pistol. Fast, very fast. The seal tensed. The warehouse froze. Victor pointed the weapon directly at Emily. The nurse didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react, because she already knew. Victor wasn't going to shoot. Not yet. The older man wanted something else. Validation, approval, victory. Then something unexpected happened. A voice echoed through the warehouse, from the shadows. "She's right." Victor froze. Emily smiled. The older man slowly turned. Then another voice appeared. "And you know it." Victor's eyes widened. More figures emerged. 1, 2, 5, 8, men and women. Different ages, different backgrounds. But all carrying the same bearing. Operators, former students, former members of Victor's training programs. The older man's face lost color, because he recognized every single one. People he'd trained, people he'd influenced, people he'd tried to recruit, people who chose another path, a better path. Then one stepped forward, a former Marine raider, another, a former Delta operator. Then another, a former intelligence officer. The warehouse filled with ghosts from Victor's past, all standing beside Emily. Not him. The older man slowly realized something. For years, he believed Emily was his greatest failure. Now he understood. She was his greatest success, because she'd become everything he never could. The pistol slowly lowered. The warehouse fell silent. Victor looked around. Then, finally laughed. A tired laugh. An old man's laugh. The fight was gone. The anger was gone. Only exhaustion remained. Then the older man looked at Emily and quietly asked, "When did you call them?" The nurse smiled. "The moment you started watching me." Victor nodded. "Of course." The older man laughed again, then finally surrendered the pistol. Just like that. No final battle, no dramatic showdown. Because the real fight ended the moment Victor realized he had already lost. The kidnapped SEAL was rescued. Victor Kane was arrested. The network collapsed, and the story should have ended there. But 3 weeks later, back at Harbor Regional Medical Center, Emily Parker returned to work. Blue scrubs, comfortable shoes, friendly smile, exactly the same as before, at least on the surface. The wounded SEAL eventually recovered. Ryan Mercer visited often, usually with coffee, usually with terrible jokes, and occasionally with questions. Questions Emily never fully answered. One afternoon, Ryan finally asked, "You know what still bothers me?" Emily smiled. "What?" The SEAL laughed, then shook his head. "You took down an armed attacker in 7 seconds. The nurse shrugged. Ryan pointed at her. "That's insane." Emily laughed softly, then answered, "It was actually 6. The SEAL stared, then burst out laughing. And for the first time in years, Emily Parker felt completely at peace, not because she had defeated Victor Kane, not because she'd saved the SEAL, not because she'd stopped the attacker, but because she finally understood something. Special operations had been what she did. Being a nurse was who she was, and no matter what happened next, that would never change.